There seems to be this big misconception amongst young people that investing takes thousands and thousands of dollars, and that you can't effectively utilize compound interest with small amounts of money. But this is false, and in order to build wealth, the absolute best thing that you can do for yourself is to start early. So in this video, I'm going to show you some examples of compound interest and why I think it's really important that once you become 18, you start investing. One thing you have to understand about compound interest is that every single time that the interest is compounded and you start to earn more money from your initial investments, that interest is then added to the original principal of the amount that you've invested. And what that means is the longer that you have interest accumulating, the more money you are going to earn in the long run. If we take a look at an example here, and this is very, very bare bones, it's not meant to be complicated, it is purely to illustrate a point. I have a calculator here where if you take something like an initial investment, so let's say for example, you've turned 18, you have a part-time job, and you want to invest a small amount of money every month. Let's say for example, you start by investing $300. Every month, you choose to add $50 to your initial investment. Let's assume that the interest rate is 10%. So on average, the stock market, if you are investing in low cost, relatively safe index funds or exchange trade funds that track indices, you can expect on average to receive roughly 10% from your initial investments and your contributions. Let's assume that this interest is compounded yearly, and then let's give it 30 years to grow. So you're 18 and you don't touch this money until you're roughly 48 to 50 years old. Let's calculate. So the total value of your investment is roughly $110,000, roughly. But look at what percentage of your investment is strictly from the interest. Roughly 90 to 95% of your investment total is purely from compound interest. Again, let's look at a different example, maybe a different living situation where you make a little bit more money, you can contribute a little bit more to your investments over the course of those 30 years. Let's say that you start with an initial investment of $500, and every single month you contribute roughly $100. We assume that the interest rate is 10% and that it's compounded yearly, and we give it roughly 30 years to grow. Let's calculate how much money you would have. Okay, so the total value of your investment would be $215,000, and you would have earned $178,000 in compound interest. Again, this is an incredibly high percentage that is being contributed strictly from the compound interest alone. If you look at the graph down here, the total amount of interest that you've earned in that dark blue section of that graph is much, much greater than the value of the money that you've put in that is cold hard cash. Most of this investment's value is coming from the fact that interest has been allowed to compound for 30 years. So let's look at one more example. Maybe, you're a little bit older. Maybe you're, 22, 23. You have some semblance of a career starting, and you can afford to contribute a little bit more. Let's say that your initial investment is roughly $1,000. Let's say that every month you contribute, let's say $200 to your investment. Let's say that we assume a 10% interest rate, it compounds yearly, and you let it grow for 30 years. So at this point, you're roughly 50, 52, 53 years old. Let's calculate. Boom. The total value of your investment is $430,000, with roughly $360,000 of that being interest alone. Again, this pattern is still evident. The idea that the amount of compound interest that calculates from the fact that it has years and years and years to compound on itself. It's wild. It's so much money. Okay, so you want to be a millionaire. At some point in your life, you want to have $1 million. understand that $1 million in 30 years is not going to have the same amount of value that $1 million has now because of inflation and just because of the way that currency changes. But let's say, for example, you invest $1,000 in your initial investment, and then every month you invest $500 extra on top of that. So in a year, you're spending roughly $6,000 on your investments. We'll assume a 10% interest rate. It compounds yearly, and we're giving it 30 years to grow. Your investments are worth over $1 million, with a significant majority of that being a result of compound interest. Isn't that amazing? That's fantastic. And the whole reason why this works is because you have time on your side. As a young investor, one of the most powerful assets of this equation, this exponential function, is that you have time on your side. You have years and years and years for this compound interest to continue to compound on itself. If we set this year amount, let's say we set it to 35 years. Let's see how this changes. It almost went up to $2 million with just an additional 5 years. Let's set it to 40 years. At this point, you're almost a millionaire times 3. The value of compound interest is time. I hope that this video emphasizes the concept and idea of compound interest and why, as a young adult or someone who's just leaving high school, maybe starting college or university or a trade school, that there is value in setting aside money for investments and allowing your money to compound on itself in something like a TFSA, an RRSP, a 401k, a Roth IRA, whatever it's called where you live. Your investments will continue to grow and grow and grow very quickly with time. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, like the video, comment down below. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you choose to invest in. There's a lot of different options, and it can be a little bit confusing, but it doesn't have to be. Otherwise, thank you for watching the video, and see you later.